Welcome to the latest edition of NETSOL's podcast series, Wired and Inspired, where we look at the human stories and inspiring personal journeys of our asset and auto finance industry's leaders. I'm Jason Hurwitz, and today I'm delighted to welcome Lee Rhodes to be our guest. Many will know Lee as one of our industry's genuine experts, possibly from working with or for him on one of his roles. This might have been Kleinwort Benson in the early days, or even a 10-year career at ING Lease. Or perhaps it was building the wholesale business at Aldermore from scratch, where you directly supported the growth of many of our industry's sort of now flourishing lenders. Over the past 5 years, Lee's been at the helm of the Aldermore asset finance business, and still leads that business today. Or perhaps you might know Lee, the marathon runner, or the endurance of a tough mudder. Or indeed Lee's contribution to the FLA, where as a board member, he's contributing to the future of the asset finance industry and bringing an awful lot of expertise through what has been a very volatile period. For those that know Lee well, and I've had the privilege of both working with you and for you for a number of years, they will know you as expert, high integrity, straight talking, true meritocracy, but also a healthy distaste for overly corporate nonsense. But with buckets of common sense, Lee is known for having a keen nose for risk and having called early some of our industry's largest fraud cases. So today we get the rare privilege to go behind the curtain and understand a little bit more about what makes Lee tick, and what's influenced his journey, and what are Lee's views on where things are going and what's going to happen next on our industry. So Lee, thank you very much for joining us. So first question, how would you describe your career journey so far?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm blushing, Jason, firstly. So thank you for that. That's overly kind, I think. But look, I've loved my time in the leasing industry, but kind of fell into it in a way that, I never expected to be here or be anywhere near here. So leasing was my second job. And I found my way to work for Kleinworts through a refer a friend scheme. So it was a friend of a friend. Kleinworts at the time had quite a generous bonus for people that work for them, introducing people, and I was desperate to get out of what I was doing, and I'll tell you a bit about that later. So when I joined, I couldn't believe my luck.
So it was the kind of it was the few £100 referral. And there you are, and a career in asset finance from there.
I know, yeah. So I turned up at my desk on that first day, and it was on the 6th floor of a building overlooking the Thames. So I had a window seat, and I was like, I've made it. This is incredible. I'd taken less money to go there, and I really started to learn my craft there. So I started in operations, paying deals out. So it was quite incredible. That was some time ago though now, Jason.
Yeah, was it 1 or 2 years? Yeah.
And then since then, I've made my career working for businesses that have ultimately either sold themselves to someone else or moved on to different things. And in each and every time, whilst that's unsettling at the outset, I look back and think of that as some of the big catalysts for change in my career.
So, and as they went through new owners, there's always a bit of reinvention that comes with that. Not necessarily you personally, but the business goes through where are we going now? What are we going to do? You must have been through quite a few of those.
I think it's just time to reflect and really put thought into what makes your business really special. And I remember when I came to the end of one of those careers at ING, and that was quite a shocking time because I don't think it was expected.
And everyone, the entire market.
Yeah. And there were a lot of
Diana
people.
moment for a lot of people. Where were you when you found out?
I know. Yeah, I know exactly where I was. Yeah. And I remember at that time, so there were a lot of people going onto the market at the same time. And I spoke to one of the brokers that I dealt with for many years whilst working at ING. One man band, and I said to him, is there any advice you can give me about my CV and how I go forward? And he told me two things. He said, number one, it's not what you do now, Lee, that gets you employed, it's what you've been doing over the last 5 years. So you can't change or influence where you're going to end up as a result of kind of this moment in time. And number two, if I were you, I'd delete all of your education from your CV.
Really? That's interesting advice. Very good. So in that journey, you've done a whole bunch of different things. So what were the highlights for you? What were the proudest moments?
I've had loads of proud moments, and quite often I pinch myself. I'm extraordinarily proud of leading the team at Aldermore, and I think we've done great things. They're super resilient, and they're super consistent in the market, and just their energy and engagement in making a difference always astounds me. I think the proudest moment for me was when I was asked to move from just building that wholesale structured business that and you'll remember this time, Jason, because you was working it at the time, to come across and lead that broker business to take all of that asset finance world of Aldermore, under common ownership. And that was like scary time for me, because I didn't really know deeply that broker market. And
I mean, we went from a team of 12 to 60
exactly
overnight.
Yeah. And then when everyone's looking at you and looking for direction, and there was lots going on at that time, so there were regulatory changes in the industry. The organisation was grappling as to how to handle those, but we had some great people, self included, that saw us through those changes, and without the quality of that team at that time, I would have struggled to get through that. So yeah, so that being asked and being entrusted with that was super proud for me, with a lot of imposter syndrome on the way through. And then just through that, that was all during that COVID period as well. So we were transitioning people to working from home. It was new ways of working with tech and laptop. All this stuff was going. It was so chaotic. But looking back, whilst there were quite dark times for the country, it was, from a professional perspective, I learned a lot and I made a lot of good connections within the industry and within the teams.
Yeah. And as you say, it was a really it was a fast-moving period. There was a lot going on, not a lot of certainty in the world. Yeah, coming off the back of that, there was that phrase of everything was unprecedented, but it was.
It absolutely was, and as we move forward, 6 years or so later, which is just incredible how fast time has moved, and you look at the other kind of macro geopolitical look at those other macro events that have happened, and I think we've become more accustomed as an industry to dealing with that, and the industry as a whole has done very well as well.
Yeah. It certainly feels like the speed of change and events is a constant these days. Whereas we went from one to the other, now it's sort of simultaneous things happening constantly.
It might just be that I'm getting older, but it certainly feels like that treadmill is speeding up, and that need to change. It's always been there. It's an ever constant, but it certainly feels like it's coming thick and fast.
But in that, there's a lot going on in the world, a lot going on in the business, a lot going on in the market, in your customer base, and the intermediaries and the brokers. You've always had that kind of work ethic just to get on with it. Where did that come from? Was that from early work years? Was it family setting? Where does your work ethic come from?
So I come from a working class background. So my mother was a home helper, my dad was a postman. So I left school at 15. I'm baby of the year. So I remember my first 2 months of working in the West End of London.
Did you get your O levels?
was on a child rate travel card, which I still talk about from time to time, which is quite interesting. Used to get stopped at the barriers all the time, not because I look older, but just because I shouldn't be travelling on my own at that time, I suspect. So when I didn't know what to do, so I did what lots of people I think in the industry did at that time, which was apply to the clearing banks for work. Right. So I got a job at the fresh age of 15, having just taken my GCSEs, finished those a week earlier, and started in what was the machine room at Lloyd's Bank in the West End. So my first job, was to encode the magnetic number, the amount of the check in the bottom corner of a check.
I'll do that. A big stack of them on your desk, and you had to put them in the
computer could process them, exactly that. And it took me a while, but I eventually ended up working on the tills at the bank and the inquiries counter, and then as a sort of very small business advisor. I think where that work ethic, I still refer to that as the hardest job I've ever done. Sitting behind the counter of a bank branch, when you're 17 years old and you've got a queue out the door and all your friends think it's really funny to hide around the corner and pretend that it doesn't exist.
Right.
Dealing with the general public and the demands and the pressures that brings, I think teaches you some really fundamental skills that have seen me through forever.
It's real, isn't it?
It's real, and it means something to people, and people frustrated being able to handle those objections and work with people to placate or find solutions. Whilst they're quite basic and that's all structured, the emotion and the pressure in those moments is massive, or was massive. But also it teaches you the fundamental skills, like answer the phone, like be genuine, have some empathy, and work with people. And so, when I think about the roles that I've had since, and certainly you spoke about Kleinworts and that first day in that desk overlooking the Thames, I couldn't believe how lucky I was because I had no one standing in front of me that was unhappy. But I still see those skills as really, really important. The basics and standards are so important to everything else you do. Technical skills you can teach.
I bet. It must have given you a lot in terms of communication skills as well, because you're in the moment there and then. You've got to respond to whatever comes up and be professional, but obviously help that person with their issue, which might be big or small, but there's a lot of anxiety around it.
It's big to them, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's big to them, and you've worked in this industry, Jason, and you now work for a large supplier of systems. The problems we're all trying to solve, and the core of them is frustration.
Yeah.
So it's the same core issues. We talk about customer journey, and but it's frustrations we're dealing with. And if we can all manage those frustrations of our customer base and our clients and our introducer bases, I'm sure we'd all write a lot more business. We'd make more money for our shareholders, be more successful.
And then you roll that forward into sort of leadership style, because that gives you work ethic, values, communication. And you roll that forward 20 years into how you lead your what is a large, complex business. How's those bits? How do you connect those dots?
Oh wow, yeah. So I don't know. I've never felt like I was a natural born leader until I joined Aldermore. I'd never led a team, and so that was also quite a scary moment in my career. And I have a lot of people working. I like to think of people working with me, not for me. Hopefully you felt that when we worked together.
Yeah,
Jason, not that I didn't get frustrated with you from time to time, but
I'll definitely be honest in this moment anyway. But, but it was.
I think it's important to be genuine and to be upfront with people, and I think it's also really, really important that you are kind of true to what you believe. And I believe that we should all be operating at a certain standard. And I think we're operating at those standards, then we're all good and we're all fine. When we're dipping below there, I believe in supporting people to get to where they need to be, or for looking for alternatives and solutions, because the impact on the greater team is much more important than the individual. Whether that be me, you, or anyone else. So to have a high performing team, I think we all need to understand, what our North Star is, where we're rowing to, and believe.
Yeah, I agree with that. Entirely. So what about the people that have had most influence on your career in professional life? The people you must have come up good, bad and the ugly in various organisations. Which ones have had the most influence on you?
I haven't come across many bad or many ugly, Jason. Okay. So I'll just talk about the good. But I think one thing I learned a few years ago, although I was never aware of it before, was the power of sponsorship. So I've become much more conscious and aware of people that are around you, either in your firm or elsewhere in the market, that have your back and are a sponsor for you. And that could be silent, and you don't always see it. I always see these things as a bit of a contract. There has to be something in it for both parties. But I do think that's really, really important. And I've benefited, I believe, from a number of sponsors over the years. And I think in the main, that's why I am where I am today. Because people see things in you that you don't necessarily have the ability in your role to demonstrate. So like leadership. So before Aldermore, as I said, I'd never led anyone, but Chris Stampo was Ned at Aldermore at the time and had worked at ING as chief exec. I think spotted me as a potential leader. So he was, he's definitely had a big influence on me. And then Carl Damassa, who was kind of managing director of business finance at the time, he really, really pushed me outside of my comfort zone. And I don't think I would be where I am today without, those early years at Aldermore and they're looking out for me and pushing me and really striving for excellence. It would be remiss not to talk about my ING years. And Mr. Robert Harris, who taught me all of my credit and structuring skills, which you kind of spoke about at the beginning, Jason, which makes me sound really dull, but
not at all.
Does float my boat. I do dig into the odd transaction even today and get really excited about it. And back on the tools is really good. So that's something that really appeals to me, and I wouldn't have those skills without him.
Yeah, I think as a commercial leader, you've outstanding risk skills. It's almost like you had a career in it, but you don't. You kind of have a natural home in that space. So shifting gears a little bit, then, how do you see the industry evolving over the next, say, 2 to 10 years? Obviously, it's hard to take a 10-year view, but you get the point.
Yeah, I think the industry is really resilient. It's shown it's resilient. It shows it's here. It's shown it's here for the long term. And will support kind of UK businesses through thick and thin. It's because it's built on good foundations, and it's got good people working in it that truly believe in the benefits that it brings to the UK economy. So I think it's in good shape, but I do think it's changing as well. If you look at the lender market, it's quite fragmented now. You've got some very big players. Right through to a lot of very small. And I think there are places for all of them, but there's only so much growth. It'll be interesting to see how investors and management teams can consider that going forward. And then just I suppose technology is moving faster than ever. I know you work in this all the time, and you're much more across it and appraised of it than I am, and you can see further into the future. But I think the market sees that this disruption coming through technology. It's a bit concerned about how it embraces it, but it feels inevitable.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think on both points really. It's great that there's so much choice in the market in terms of lenders out there, and with diverse appetites and varying levels of expertise. But equally, is there too much choice now, and there's not enough sort of scalability in some of these organisations? So are we at an inflection point where there's going to be some consolidation in the market? It's been called before, but potentially.
I just think there's a lot of similar, Jason. And so whether that leads to consolidation or otherwise, it's like, where do you go for your growth or your efficiency?
Yeah.
So at the end of the last financial crisis, you saw the rise of the challengers because there was a need in the market. I now think there are a lot of providers, serving those needs. It's still there and it's still absolutely valid. But I suppose the question is, what's next?
Yeah.
We've seen the rise of the loan market within asset finance and leasing, and I think that's here to stay. But that can be quite cyclical as well as you go through those credit curves, and I think or those credit cycles. And I think that asset finance and the principles of matching your capital investment with your financing solution is here to stay.
Yeah.
And I also think that the country needs alternatives outside of the main incumbents as well.
For sure. And it's an interesting one on the business loans part. Whilst it's a valid product in many, many scenarios, often it's picking up business that probably should be better served by an asset finance product with security on it and an interest rate that's more favourable because of the more security in the deal. But yet business is flowing that way.
Yeah.
And it's probably that old analogy where water flows on the easiest path. So if it's flowing to business loans because it's easier, what can we do in the asset finance industry to make that easier so the water finds its more natural home?
I think it's the industry talks about customer journeys a lot, and I think it's right to. And I see it in LinkedIn, I see it at the conferences, and in my own firm as well. We talk about that customer journey and frictionless service and end to end and straight through processing. But it's always been a bit of a utopia, and I think the challenge for the industry or for one of the players or more of the players in that industry is to solve that. Yeah. Because if you solve that, then I think the opportunities are endless. I also think that for too long, we've looked to the brokers and said, right, okay, we'll educate the brokers and we'll work with the brokers to provide certain information in a certain way. And I really don't think that's the solution. I think the lenders need to come closer to the brokers to bring together the information that the brokers can provide with other information that the lenders that require, that's either available to them through public sources or through their own kind of research and analysis, to get to those decisions and to fulfill those transactions in a seamless way. And I think the firm that cracks that will make hay.
I really agree. And I think we see it, talk to a lot of different firms around the market and what they're doing and where they're thinking. And a lot of people are, we mentioned technology there, and it's always had a transformative effect, but now more than ever, and particularly with AI, because it's opening our minds to what's possible. It's a lot of people are deploying technology to sort of make the same process better. That's almost what you're referring to there. Is what we need to do is think about how we could do this differently, not just make the same. I've got two people sat there. If I get a solution that does that work, then fine. Rather than reimagine, you know what, we need to achieve this. We need to be safe lending. We need to have a slicker process and more scalability. How can we do this differently? There aren't that many people I see, and I can't speak for all of them all, but who are doing that. So it sounds like you are, and that's
we're certainly thinking about it. But we work in a banking environment, and there are conflicts within that around control, keeping customers safe, and all of those kind of things. I think you're right. Whether you get there iteratively or you go big bang, I suppose that's for us to decide. But just carrying on as we are, with that lumpy customer journey, we're almost inviting alternatives in, whatever they may be, to serve those customers. And we shouldn't let that happen.
No, and it is harder. It's a harder lending journey. There's an asset, there's a supplier, there's an intermediary, there's a lender, and there's a borrower. So there's more going on in the deal. But equally, you think, we're not landing people on the moon. I'm sure we can find ways of making that a bit easier and a bit clearer. So people can fall into it a bit more rather than have to be. I mean, brokers do a fantastic job of guiding people through the journey and explaining it to them, but it's still inherently a lumpier journey.
I think the value that brokers add to the market is huge. I think where we need to bridge that gap is understand and appreciate the skills where they exist, and if we can bring the market closer together and work more in partnership with some investment, then I definitely think it's achievable.
So touching a bit more on the technology side, so what do you see as the most exciting part of technology right now? You talked about this already in terms of how do you truly streamline the journey, but have you got some interesting things you're working on or things that excite you in that space?
So I think technology has a massive part to play, and I think we need much more dynamism in our customer journeys and our lending journeys. And so, I think we can use technology to, expand our propositions, serve more of the market, price for some risk, and become more of a one-stop shop for a wider community of brokers, introducers, and customers. It's engaging about leveraging that and spending the time and effort, money to deliver that to our brokers on a consistent basis. So I think some efficiency, but really with the outcome aim of delivering brilliance, because I think if you deliver brilliance, then you can do more.
Yeah. We're going to change it up very slightly now and do a quick game, if that's all right with you. And I've not prepped you on this at all, so you have no idea what's coming, but don't worry, it's just a bit of fun. And it's a sort of professional game of Would You Rather.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, so nice and straightforward.
Yeah.
Right, just
played this before, Jason. It didn't go well.
Did not. We'll see. We'll see. They're quite tame options, don't you worry. So, complete 5 smaller things on your to-do list, or knock over a big one.
Knock over a big one.
Yeah. Okay. Learn and grow from a mistake, or avoid a risk.
I'd love learning and growing from a mistake. I don't like those mistakes to be massive. But I think with the right team around you, you can navigate that. But I don't mind taking a bit of calculated risk, and I think without doing that, you don't move forward.
Yeah, agreed. Step into a thought shower of corporate babble, or get stuck in an elevator with a colleague bragging about their new car.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, no, it's a tough one, that, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we fund a lot of fancy cars, as you know, Jason. So I'm not really into my cars, but I don't think my colleagues would forgive me if I said I didn't want to stand in a lift and listen about their cars. So that, yeah.
Both of those
lift
room
with a
101.
car. Yeah.
Here's another one. Give a fist bump to someone in your team or a hug.
So I once did one of these tests, personality tests, and I'll never forget it. I don't think I've ever told you this. And it was things that you should do when communicating with Lee. It was on one of these really random questionnaires, and things that you shouldn't do. And one of the things that you shouldn't do, which isn't true but sticks in the mind, was when communicating with Lee, do not touch him or his things.
Right? So
it's fist bump, because it's less physical contact.
Right, just keep your distance over there. Right,
Yeah.
Fist bump, not a hug. I like it. Last one. Invest in the career of an up-and-coming junior colleague, or lead the team through a technical issue.
Oh, wow. So I take a lot of pride in seeing people develop, within my teams and around. And when people have moved on to bigger and better things, it fills me with pride. So absolutely helping develop people and seeing their careers flourish is becoming more and more important to me as I get older.
And I'm sure, hopefully, lots of those people will nod in listening to this and say, "Yeah, I was one of those people." Brilliant. That's the end of that game. Thanks, Lee. A couple of questions more. So, what excites you about where the industry's going? What makes you think that we're going to be good? We're going in a good way. There's a lot good stuff still to come.
So I see the talent in the industry now, and I think we are at our strongest than we've been for quite some time. I look at the intermediary market, and I see how they have professionalised. I see young people coming out of those firms and forming their own, spawning into new firms. So I think the industry is quite rich at the moment. I see challengers like new firms coming through, doing things differently. There is investment and there is thought going into the market as to how we do things differently and how we make a change. But it also feels quite safe. You spoke about some large industry frauds in the past, and you look at how the industry is galvanized to try and bring solutions to help protect kind of ourselves and all of our customers ultimately, against those is really quite impressive. So I think the industry is in really safe hands as a whole, but I also think it's ripe for change as well. We've spoken a bit about technology. I see that really kind of elevating and accelerating what the industry is doing. I still think there is a need for education across SMEs. Whole market talks about this. It's not a one and done. SMEs are forming all the time, so it's keeping going round and round and round. I think we have to find a way of cracking that because they are our future customers. And I see and hear more of my competitors and counterparts talking about kind of future buying patterns and kind of how demographic in business Britain is changing and kind of what's needed and subscription model, all of this sort of stuff just feels like a melting pot of ideas, and hopefully loads of solutions will come out of that.
Yeah, and we're at an interesting time in the industry where you could sit there in one sense, everything should be digitized online and kind of a solely digital journey, where we don't even need salespeople or brokers or anything like that. But that's nonsense because we all know, in consumer world, that's fine. But there are many businesses, particularly when they're taking out their first debt finance, they're terrified.
Yeah.
And it's finding that balance between, and they need to talk to human beings who can reassure them.
Yeah, I mean, as a firm, we've just increased and broadened dramatically our auto decision capability, which is fantastic, but also makes me a little bit nervous, Jason, for what you're talking about. Because, what are we good at as an industry? We're good at structuring. We're good at working with those customers to deliver solutions. And I think tech is really, really important in that. And informing decisions is really, really important at that. But I think if we go completely online and completely automated, then we will be leaving a load of customers behind that need and deserve our support. So that mix and that blend of experts in their field, through that intermediary community or in direct sales forces where they exist, and that relationship and partnership across that whole market, the choice that provides, I think, is a non-negotiable. I think that has to be there.
You and I did quite a bit of work on this. It's not about should we automate or not. It's which segments in which scenarios should be automated. It's more nuanced than that.
It's about generating time for those experts to do the things that they're expert at.
Final question. If you could change magic wand, if you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be?
So I fell into this industry at quite a young age. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't a career choice. It was an escape from where I was. I would make this industry much more attractive to the younger generation. I would make it a place where people went out of their way to come and work in. So make it much more visible, in schools and universities. I think you can find your way in this industry, and I think you can be really, really successful. I don't think you necessarily need kind of the best degrees. I think this industry supports real people with good integrity that do the right thing. I just wish it was more visible to those people looking for their career.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I guess things like this can help because people get an insight into what was your journey, what was that like, and hopefully it inspires people to take a similar path rather than falling into it. And on that note, thank you, Lee, for a sort of candid and engaging discussion. You're always inspiring and true to form, straight talking, human and expert. As I said, I'm sure your story will be inspiring to many. And our industry looks forward to whatever it is you've still got to do, because it's not like you're in your final days by any stretch.
Yeah, I hope not, Jason. You're not retiring me off yet.
No, yeah. So that brings us to the end of this edition of NETSOL's Wired and Inspired podcast series. Thank you for listening, and please tune in for future interviews.